Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. It's the post-game podcast from yet another Timberwolves blowout victory over a bad team. We'll talk about why it was still an encouraging win for Minnesota, plus Naz Reid's continued surge, and why to be encouraged by Rob Dillingham's minutes in this game. It's all coming next.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Wolves. I'm Ben Beecken. Locked On Wolves is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Happy Tuesday, everybody. It's a victory Tuesday after a big Wolves win over the shorthanded Dallas Mavericks on Monday night. This is the post-game podcast. We're going to talk about how the Wolves blew out yet another bad team. Yes, they're dominating bad teams. They're also 9-5, and this was finally a really impressive one for a lot of reasons. We'll get into all of those reasons, what happened in this game. I want to focus in on the Rob Dillingham minutes, which could easily get lost in this thing, and on its face didn't look great. The plus minus wasn't great. There were some shaky moments, but the process was close. And, I think this is the appropriate time to kind of dig in on something like that. So we'll get into that here in a little bit. We'll talk about another slow game from Anthony Edwards and lots of garbage time in this one. So we can talk about all those guys that played. Leonard Miller, some great Jalen Clark minutes, non-garbage time Jalen Clark minutes in the first half of this one. Really gave D'Lo a run for his money. So a lot to get into today. But some interesting stuff when we get into Dillingham and what the Wolves are able to do defensively against a really bad offensive Dallas Mavericks team. So all that's upcoming on the show. A big thank you off the top for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as wherever you like to listen to podcasts. You can find this show. Okay. So setting the stage, of course, Dallas is woefully undermanned. We know Kyrie Irving is out for an extended period of time. Anthony Davis continues to be out as well. But a whole host of other guys just did not play for Dallas, despite a couple guys playing on Sunday in their win against Portland. Remember, this was the second night of a back-to-back as well for Dallas. So no Dante Exum, among others. And so this was we'll call it a very winnable game for Minnesota. It was a game that they had no business losing. That said, we've seen Minnesota in past years struggle. And it goes back to what I talked about on Monday's show this week. I don't think the Wolves are apologizing for beating bad teams. I get it. We can be skeptical of how Minnesota hasn't beaten a good team, but what's the alternative? You don't want to lose to the bad teams. You got to beat them. What are you supposed to do? And they did. They won by 24 in this one. They jumped out to a 13-point lead after the first quarter, 17 points at halftime, really put the game away in the third quarter. Yes, the health advantage, the rest advantage is the bad team. It's all true. But the way they jumped all over Dallas relatively early in this game was pretty impressive. It was touch and go the first half of the first quarter. And then midway through the first quarter, it was like, oh, wait, this is bad offense on both ends. And then all of a sudden, it was only bad offense on the Dallas end, combined with good defense for Minnesota. And then eventually a flurry of Naz Reid scoring late in the first quarter, kind of mid-late first quarter for Minnesota, that allowed them to get out to that 13-point lead. They dropped 34 in the first frame and held Dallas to just 21. As the first half went on, I want to get into the Rob Dillingham minutes here in a second, but we saw lots of Dillingham early in the second quarter. And then as the second quarter wore on, it was a lot of Jalen Clark locking down D'Angelo Russell. It culminated in a pickpocket where Clark was called for a foul. The Timberwolves challenged it. They reviewed it, overturned it to a offensive foul on D'Angelo Russell because he hooked and he hooked and just grabbed Clark's arm to try to hold him off. Clark still stole the ball. And then ultimately it was a foul call on D'Angelo Russell anyway. So Clark loses the steal in the scenario, but I guess it's better than having the foul called on him. But that was just kind of the culmination of being all over D'Angelo Russell. And frankly, D'Lo didn't have a great game, but he was kind of the only real answer offensively, at least off the bench for them. I know Jaden Hardy ended up scoring some points, but it was just kind of a disjointed offense. Cooper Flagg barely got any shots up early in this game, finished with just 15 points on 10 shots. Looked okay, just wasn't really, again, not really in the flow as has been the case for the Dallas Mavericks offense all season. They came in with the league's worst offensive rating. And so it was always going to be a game where Minnesota's defense was going to have to show out. Perhaps most impressively in this game was the non-Rudy defense. those minutes have been brutal all year. We've talked about it at length on this show. We focused on it last week, and now we've had 3 games since then, but I don't think it's really changed until maybe this game, where the Timberwolves offense with Rudy on the floor is bad, but the defense is awesome. And with Rudy off the floor, the defense is atrocious and the offense is good. Overall, of course, Minnesota was a top 5 offensive team coming in the middle of the pack defensive team. Both of those numbers move in the right direction after this game. The Rudy-less defensive unit, which, as we talked about, I think I even talked about this on Monday's show, basically, as long as Jaylen Clark and Jaden McDaniels are on the floor together with no Rudy, the Timberwolves can survive those minutes defensively pretty easily. I shouldn't say easily. Jaden can provide enough of rim protection, even if it's wing side rim protection. They're just teams knowing that McDaniels is lurking has a major impact. And then Jaylen Clark can play the role of point of attack defender, and Jaden can be the rim protector. It's like with the starting unit where a lot of times Jaden, I know the Wolves have tried to move away from this a little bit, McDaniels will still end up on the ball a fair amount, and Rudy's the rim protector. Or they can let Jaden roam, and then Ant pressures the ball and can guard the point of attack. But with Rudy off the floor, those rules shift a little bit. And as long as Jaylen Clark and Jaden McDaniels are on the floor together, even without Rudy, Minnesota's defense is passable at worst. And in this game, it was really good. And of course, it helps matters that Dallas has the league's worst offense. But the non-Rudy defensive minutes were actually quite good. And that's a big credit to that kind of defensive pairing that Chris Finch uncovered, Jaylen Clark and Jaden McDaniels together. That was really, really important. And the other thing is, coming into this game, I cautioned against Dallas shooting a lot of free throws, which I was concerned about. Dallas is not a great offensive rebounding team, which is a good thing. Minnesota did end up dominating the glass overall in this game. Dallas they did get 10 offensive rebounds, which is not a big number, but it's maybe more than would have been ideal. Minnesota overall was a plus 16 on the glass and a plus, I think they were over 20 advantage points in the paint. No, just 14 points in the paint. So they're plus 16 on the glass, plus 14 points in the paint. So not surprising, a Dallas team that was basically like, I don't know, like no real bigs. Dwight Powell off the bench. Musa Cisse, I forgot how you say his last name. I looked it up and then I forgot. Musa Cisse, like those are the only bigs that really played for Dallas. And, Minnesota should have dominated the paint, and they did. Again, we can be like, it was Dallas and guys were out and it was a back-to-back, but like, you still got to win the game. No one's saying that they're going to win the finals because they beat a bad team by 24, but you got to roll the ball out and play. And Minnesota did do that. They showed up and they played really well in this one. I want to get into the Rob Dillingham minutes next. And specifically what I thought went well. There were definite pros and cons. Like, it's very easy to point to, here's what Dillingham did really well, and here's what he did poorly. And that's what we're going to do. Like, it was a pretty clear divide, and he did a lot of stuff. He was around the ball a lot on both ends of the floor in this one. So we'll dig in on the Dillingham minutes next. We'll talk about the end of the bench guys that played significant garbage time in this game, and we'll also do individual studs and duds to close the show. We'll do all that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at Rippling. If you're a business owner, here's the truth. SaaS, SaaS, promised to make work easier, but now the average company is buried by hundreds of apps that slow down your teams and simply don't work together. That's not SaaS, that's SAD. SAAD, software as a disservice, and that's why you need Rippling. Rippling is the unified platform for global HR, payroll, IT, and finance all in one place. They've helped millions of businesses replace a mess of disconnected tools with one system designed to give leaders clarity, speed, and control. What I love about Rippling is it removes bottlenecks and busy work that will often slow teams down. And trust me, it's if you've worked in business, you know how easily those bottlenecks happen. Everything from onboarding to payroll to IT access runs automatically and perfectly in sync. It is seriously simple to use and gives companies one source of truth for their people, data, and everything they touch. Whether you want to run your entire HR, IT, and finance operations as one, or just fill the gaps in your software stack, Rippling can do it all. And right now you can get 6 months free when you go to rippling.com/LockedOnNBA. Learn more at rippling.com. That's RIPPLING.com/LockedOnNBA. That's rippling.com/LockedOnNBA for 6 months free. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at PrizePicks. You and I make decisions every day, but on PrizePicks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement of this sports season, whether you're following the NFL, the NBA. Obviously, if you're listening to this podcast, you're following at least the Timberwolves in the NBA. There's no better time to jump in on the action. If you haven't tried it yet, PrizePicks is absolutely the simplest way to play. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats, and if you get them right, you win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup. You can play anywhere that PrizePicks operates. That includes states like California, Texas, Georgia. Anywhere PrizePicks operates, you can play. Football Sundays, ton of fun. NBA tip-offs, like any given, like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, especially when there's so many games going on. It's a ton of fun. Also, I always like with football, like there's one game Thursday. There's usually 2 or 3 NBA games on Thursday nights. You could pick across both NFL and NBA on Thursday nights. That's the best night of the week, in my opinion, to do it. Plus, the new stacks feature at PrizePicks is a game changer. You can now pick more on Steph's points, threes, and assists in the same lineup. Obviously, do the same thing with Ant. Do the same thing with, he's probably the only guy in the Wolves that you'd want to stack points, threes, and assists, but it's an option. Plus, if one of your players leaves early with an injury, the injury reboot saves your lineup from a loss. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA for $50 in lineup after your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. It's good to be right. Big thank you once again for making Locked On Wolves your first listen of the day. And another thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. We could not do it without you, the loyal listeners. A big thank you for listening to Locked On Wolves and making us your first listen every single day. All right, let's talk Rob Dillingham. So there was garbage time in this game, a lot of it. In fact, Leonard Miller came in with like 10 minutes left, which was crazy. But Rob Dillingham played like 5-6 minutes early in the second quarter that were non-garbage time minutes. And a lot of things happened in the time that Rob Dillingham was on the floor. A quick glance at the box score would tell you it was all bad. He was a -17 in a game the Wolves won by 24. That's a really hard thing to do. Really hard to win by 24, play 13 minutes, and manage to be a -17. In fact, nobody else on the Timberwolves was worse than a -7, and that was 7 minutes of Joe Ingles in garbage time. Everybody else that played rotation minutes, this is crazy. So there were 9 guys who played non-garbage time rotation minutes for the Timberwolves in this game. They were all at least a +14, except for Rob Dillingham, who was a -17. That is a really hard thing to do because everyone he was on the floor with in the second quarter was at least a +14. However, I don't think it was all bad from Rob Dillingham. I really don't. And if you're a regular listener to the show, people don't like how pessimistic I am about Rob Dillingham. I just here's the thing. I'm not going to get on like a soapbox about this necessarily, but like the coaching staff, the front office, they see Rob every day. They know what he's capable of doing in practice, in the film room, etc. And to this point, what he's not capable of. On some level, he's just going to need to get an opportunity, which is exactly why he got such a long leash in the second quarter of this game, because Chris Finch knew this was a game we have to give Rob some actual game reps and let him go, let him play. We've got a double-digit lead in the second quarter. We should win this game. Let's see what he can do against a team that we should be able to survive against on both sides of the floor, not just survive, but dominate. And we saw both sides of Rob Dillingham. He came into the game with the Timberwolves up 14 with about 9.5 minutes left in the second quarter. He, like a minute after getting into the game, misses a 3, an open 3. Then he gets a steal right after missing the 3. Gets a steal. It's great. Kicks the ball ahead of Jaden McDaniels, who gets fouled. So that's a really, missing an open 3. It happens, whatever. But then he turns around, gets the steal, generates a shot. That's great. Couple possessions later, he gets another steal. And then he gets blocked. He gets his layup blocked at the rim. He tries to go like 1-on-2 basically at the rim, gets blocked. Right after that, like the next possession, he commits a foul. And then he commits another foul, this time a shooting foul. So 2 fouls within 7 seconds from Rob Dillingham. He misses another 3 on the other end after D'Lo scores. So D'Lo scores on him. He misses a 3. D'Lo scores again on the other end. And then Rob comes down and hits a shot, gets a defensive rebound, calls his own number in the open floor, misses a jumper, and then comes out of the game with Minnesota up by 8. So he was a -6 in that stint. And then a lot of the rest of this was garbage time where, that kind of built up that plus minus in the wrong direction. So that 6-minute stint was packed, like lots of Rob Dillingham action. I thought the defensive awareness is really good. I thought the passes he made were really good. I thought the overall decision-making he made was positive. Missing the open shots isn't great. Getting blocked at the rim isn't great. But I thought it was a good stint. I really did. If you go back and watch that 6.5, 7 minutes or so that he played in the second quarter, I thought that overall, Dillingham was in the right place at the right time. He was doing the right things. He was being active. He was stimulated the Timberwolves offense by moving the basketball, not getting stagnant. We've seen him get stagnant and try and break down guys off the dribble a little bit too much in his very young career. That wasn't happening in this game. So I was encouraged. I'd love to be able to look at the box score and be like, oh, okay, this is a good Rob game. But it wasn't, according to the box score. So, at some point, hopefully the eye test and the box score will jive with one another, because sometimes it's the other way around where the box score looks good and it's like, well, he made some shots he maybe shouldn't have made and whatever. This was just 8 points on 12 shots. He somehow shot the ball 12 times in 13 minutes. 1 assist to 2 turnovers, missed all 3 of his 3-point shots, committed 3 fouls in 13 minutes, was a -17 in a game the Wolves won by 24. None of that sounds good, but I tell you, the process of the second quarter I thought was okay. I thought it was good overall, and I was glad that Chris Finch gave him that additional leash and the additional run in the second quarter of a game the Wolves were always going to win, at least once we got past the 9 minutes into the first quarter. Once it was toward the end of the first quarter, Minnesota's up double figures. That was okay, I think they'll be all right. And Chris Finch felt the same way and gave Dillingham some run. Now, hopefully against the Wizards on Wednesday, we see some more Rob Dillingham, some more opportunity for him to kind of iron out some kinks and get more familiar with regular season NBA basketball. I think that would be really, really good. All right, so we talked Rob, we talked non-Rudy defensive minutes, we talked about the big margins on the glass and in the paint. Slow Anthony Edwards start to this game. And ultimately, I guess just a slow game overall for him, but a really slow start. I think he was 0 for his first 5 from the field, didn't make his first shot from the field until kind of late second quarter. I think he had 4 points at halftime, maybe. Ended up with 13 points on 14 shots, 3 assists to 2 turnovers, was a +14, which was the worst mark of any Timberwolves starter. But I thought overall, Ant was okay. Again, same thing as last game, actually, when he shot the ball terribly. In the loss to Denver, he was just a terrible shooting night. The decision-making was good. I thought the decision-making was positive for Anthony Edwards. As funny as that is, Ant was not haha funny, but Ant was 1 of 7 from 3, and Jaden McDaniels was 3 of 4. Jaden is over 50% still from 3 on the season. It's crazy. And Ant is really scuffling the last few games here from outside the arc. No one on the Wolves besides Naz, who we'll talk about here in a second, everyone else was no one else scored more than 15 points. Naz had 22. All the starters had between 12 and 15 points apiece. Now, none of them played more than 29 minutes. They didn't have to. But I thought that the production distribution was pretty interesting in this game as well. Overall, this was a very, I would say, business-like performance from the Timberwolves from start to finish. It took them just a couple minutes to kind of get their sea legs in the first quarter. They eventually got them under themselves. Jalen Clark had the big defensive minutes in the second quarter. Despite not shooting the ball well, the ball movement was really good. The offense was flowing, and they really rode the Naz Reid scoring in the first half to allow them to have that 17-point lead at halftime. But I thought it was overall very well executed from Minnesota to be able to then stretch that lead from 17 to over 30, I think 32 going to the fourth quarter. To allow them to have 9+ minutes of garbage time when it was their third game in 4 nights. I think that's really important. Obviously, a little bit more rest here upcoming. They've got 2 days off over the weekend after games Wednesday and Friday. So, but good to steal those extra minutes. And again, an off shooting night. Minnesota shot just 32% from outside the arc, but they were, what did I say, a +14 in the paint, I think, in this game. And, even being a minus in the free throw column, free throw free throw column, free throw differential, whatever. They allowed 6 more free throws to Dallas and made 1 less free throw than Dallas did. But it didn't matter because they were so good in the paint. And they also squeezed the trigger on 14 more threes than the Mavericks in this game. So that was huge too. I want to talk about individual studs and duds. We'll peek ahead at what's next. We'll do all that here next to close out the show. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by Robinhood. Your ambition just met its match with Robinhood. You play for the win, not just on game day, every day. Locking in on every opening, beating your PR, beating it again. Channel that drive into your money. Robinhood puts you in control of your money. Trade stocks and ETFs, options, futures, and crypto all in one platform. You can now build and execute your own trades from a desktop with Robinhood Legends advanced tools, or take advantage of the new Robinhood strategies with a tailored portfolio managed by a team of experts. You expect more from yourself. Expect more from your money. Get started today at Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Again, that's Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Your money, your move. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is also brought to us by our friends at Rougiette. Let's be real, making excuses does not solve anything. We've all heard them before. It's just stress, I'm tired, or it happens to everyone sometimes. But when it comes to performance, sometimes your body just needs a little extra support. And that's where Rougiette comes in. Rougiette.com offers fast-acting doctor-prescribed treatments for ED designed to help you stop making excuses and start making moves. Rougiette makes it easy to get started. You just connect with a board-certified doctor 100% online. No awkward waiting rooms, no in-person appointments. If you're prescribed, your treatment will ship discreetly straight to your door. The process is fast, simple, and private, and it's all handled by real doctors. It's about confidence, connection, and getting back to the moments that matter. Visit Rougiette.com. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnNBA to get 15% off your first order. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnNBA. And don't forget to use our code LockedOnNBA so they know that we sent you. Rougiette, stop making excuses and start making moves. All right, individual studs and duds in this one. A little weird, as mentioned earlier. One guy scored more than 15. 5 guys scored between 12 and 15. You had a bunch of bench, like garbage time scoring spread out. Obviously, Naz Reid. We got to talk about him. He was the best player on the floor in this game. 22 points on 14 shots in 23 minutes. 3 of 6 outside the arc. 12 boards, 2 assists, 3 turnovers. 12 boards. Was a plus 18 off the bench. The Fado Sports Network did a nice Libby Olsen talked about how he's wearing the armband with his sister's name on it. Of course, she tragically was killed just a couple of months ago. And him, they talked about him wearing the armband, I think, for the first time in this game. Really nice Naz performance, and he's played much better of late. Obviously, his offense has been just really struggling coming along here the first few weeks of the season. But over the past few, I mean, he had 12 and 12 against the Kings on Friday, and then Saturday against Denver in the loss, he had 19 and 6, despite fouling out in 31 minutes. And then good to see him have 22 and 12, 3 of 6 on threes. Overall, in the month of November, he's 39% from outside the arc, which is great after he hovered around 30% in the first couple weeks of the season. So overall in the season, that number is definitely headed in the right direction for Naz, back into the a little above league average in terms of his 3-point shooting. But I thought it was all working for him, right? Right hand, left hand, the hooks, had an and one mixed in there, knocked down some threes. Really an all-around solid performance from Naz Reid. And he kind of carried the Timberwolves offense when it was a little bit sluggish, kind of mid first quarter. He kind of pulled it out, and then I thought the ball movement from there improved a lot. And Naz was part of that. But into the second quarter, even the ball movement carried forward. And even though Minnesota missed a lot of first half shots, I thought the ball was snapping around the perimeter. The decision-making was sound. And again, Naz was a really, really big part of that. I would also say, in terms of studs, Rudy's got to be on the list for this one. I know it was just 15 and 9, but he also had 4 assists. He had 3 stocks in this game, 5 offensive rebounds. I was surprised he actually only had 1 block, 2 steals, 1 block. It felt like he had more, certainly impacted more than just the 1 shot. And 5 offensive rebounds. He kept a lot of balls alive in the paint. And again, set the tone early. And it's been a tale of 3 versions of Rudy this season. He plays really good against a lot of bad teams. He plays kind of okay against some other bad teams, and then he plays terribly so far against good teams. He was really good in this game. Ended up only having to play 29 minutes, but somehow didn't commit any fouls despite being relatively aggressive on the glass. A very nice Rudy Gobert performance. My third stud, weirdly, I think it's going to be Jaylen Clark. He only had 5 points in 19 minutes on 5 shots and was only 1 of 4 outside the arc. Continues to just kind of be really up and down out there. He had 6 rebounds. 4 of them were offensive rebounds. He had a steal in this game. And in the steal, by the way, then I think that was the steal that led to then an offensive foul, or excuse me, was it off? I think it was a steal and then a defensive foul in the backcourt against Dallas. Frustrated the Mavericks, pickpocketed D'Lo, drew that offensive foul against D'Lo. Active on the offensive glass. There was one possession that he tracked down the ball in the right corner. This was in the second quarter, I believe. It was just it was while Dillingham was on the floor, and it led to a Dillingham 3 that he missed. It led to an Ant 3 that he missed, but it was a scramble play where Clark came from the other side of the rim, ended up with the ball in the right corner after being on the left side of the rim, and kept the possession alive for Minnesota. It's those plays, and that shows up in the box scores and offensive rebound ultimately, but it's a hustle play that he didn't have any business getting that rebound. But Jaylen Clark plays at a breakneck speed all the time, but yet is still under control most of the time. And just a really strong all-around performance. And again, 5.6 rebounds doesn't jump off the page, but 6 rebounds from a guard in 19 minutes and 4 offensive rebounds. And the way that he did what he did in this game, and when he did it, late first, early second, mid-second quarter, when Minnesota was really putting this game away. That's when they created that separation on the scoreboard. And Jaylen Clark was a massive part of that. He was really, really good in this game. Quieter games like Dante had 14 points on 8 shots. He was good, made some threes early in the third quarter. Talked about Rudy. Jaden was fine, only got 6 shots off, only had to play 23 minutes, 15 points on 6 shots. That will play. He could have easily been a stud in this game too. 3 of 4 outside the arc, 4 of 5 at the line. Jaden just continues to be really good. Also 5 rebounds, 3 assists. So really 15, 5 and 3 in 23 minutes is a very nice line for Jaden McDaniels as well. He could easily have been a stud. This was one of Julius Randle's worst games of the season. Weirdly, though, he was still second in plus minus. By the way, Dante was a plus 35 in 26 minutes. Randle was a plus 21 in 27 minutes, but was just 4 of 16 shooting and 1 of 5 on threes. Teams like we saw Denver do on Saturday are comfortable allowing him to shoot threes, especially with how good Jaden's been. And pick and roll game working okay for Minnesota, and Ant being Ant. Pick your poison. They're letting Randle shoot the 3 versus play bully ball and get into the paint. And that's kind of what happened in this game. He just didn't make those shots. He was 1 of 5 on threes, 3 of 11 on 2s in this game for Randle. But overall, again, a strong offensive performance from the Timberwolves. I mean, anytime you could turn in they had 90, 70, let's see, they had 98 points at the end of 3 quarters. So that's we'll take that. We'll take 98 at the end of 3 quarters. Even though the outside shooting wasn't great, they generated enough free throws and they dominated the paint enough to have efficient offense. Tomorrow we'll dig back into the numbers. Minnesota is going to still be a top 5 offense inevitably, and the defense I'm sure will improve, 15, 16, something like that in the league. We'll talk about all those things. I want to talk a little more about the Jaden McDaniels, Jaylen Clark defensive units with Rudy on the bench. We'll dig in on that a bit. We'll also preview Wolves Wizards as this 4-game homestand comes to an end. The Timberwolves host the Wizards on Wednesday evening, so we'll preview that matchup as part of tomorrow's show as well. And then on Friday, the Timberwolves head back out on the road for the first game of a 3-game road trip. They go to Phoenix Friday night for an 8 p.m. tip later this week, and then they get the weekend off, Saturday, Sunday off before they're in Sacramento on Monday night. A reminder that the live postcast takes place on Locked On Wolves on YouTube after basically every Timberwolves game. There was one game last week. I think it was Friday night. We didn't have a postcast, but usually Luke and Jack are going to be with you on Locked On Wolves live after the games on YouTube, the Locked On Wolves channel on YouTube, and then that audio gets posted right here on Locked On Wolves, the audio feed. So it's the episode before this on the audio feed, as well as in the live section of our YouTube channel. You can check out Luke and Jack. They do an awesome job, a quick hitting 20-minute show they do live after each and every Timberwolves game. Big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. A reminder that for your second listen, you can check out the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Show. Josh Lloyd hosts the #1 fantasy basketball podcast out there, giving you daily tips and helping you win your league, all while making you a smarter NBA fan. You can find Locked On Fantasy Basketball on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And remember, it's the #1 sports podcast network. That's right. Locked On is now the #1 sports podcast network. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast. We'll catch you next time.